what you worked on before might be holding you back right now. Growth often requires releasing who you were. We'll talk more about it right after this.
Let's talk about love and marriage the way that God intended. Life experience, here we share it. The Low Fruit Podcast. Tune in from any platform. Low Fruit Podcast. Will help your spirit transform.
Hello, we're here to transform spirits. Hey, Maurice, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Hello, everybody out there. Today, we're talking a little bit about things that worked before. It was success before. You won awards and trophies before, but that ain't working no more. Those old tricks is not helping you right now. So I think about we live right outside of Philadelphia, and our football team was the Super Bowl champions. And sometimes in recent games that they've played, they didn't look like champions anymore. And a lot of diehard fans are like, well, what's going on? We're the reigning champs, and, we don't look like it out there. Who's making the calls? And all the things that worked in the past, they're not working anymore. And the team's response, I think, sometimes is key. Like, hey, well, we don't have the same players, or things have changed. And with that, we have to understand that with change, we have to grow, and we have to understand that we're not the same team that we were when we won the Super Bowl. We've lost a few players. We've lost some, perhaps, coaches and personnel. So it's not the exact same. So to replicate what was is not always the easiest thing. And even in life, when the players are the same and everyone, is the same, like in our relationship, things are not always to replicate. I know for myself, even trying to replicate a recipe or something, it's like, oh, wow, that mac and cheese was so good. You used, this sauce and these cheeses and whatever. And every time I try to do it again, it's not the same. It's not as creamy, or it's not, whatever it is. It just doesn't come out that well. I was going to say thebomb.com, but I was like, oh my gosh, that's like so old. So, there's just things that go on in our lives that require some releasing of the way that things were. I know Maurice and I, we talk a lot about the past and the way things were, and what, nostalgic wise, like, hey, I remember back in my day, this was going on, and, we reminisce on those things. But sometimes looking back for too long can stall our growth. It doesn't allow us to move forward in our goals, because we are like, oh, wow, it was this way. And sometimes we want to repeat that again. We want that feeling again, and we want that success again. Life was easy before cell phones, or whatnot. But they're here, and they're here to aid us and help. So if we stayed in that mindset, it would certainly stall our growth and prohibit us from moving forward. And I think that's likewise in so many other parts of our life. What about you, Reese? What do you think about this thing about old wins not leading, and helping us in a new season?
I mean, so depending on when you're listening, I'm not sure if the Eagles are the former champions or not. So again, we're from outside of Philly, and we grew up in Philadelphia. So, and even with that, the Eagles ain't my team. My team are the Tennessee Titans, which ultimately, I go all the way back to the Houston Oilers. So different vibe, different feeling. Call me a traitor. Who cares? But anyway, the reality is that the what happens in that, and I'm gonna stick to that football analogy or idea. There's so many key factors. Kafa talked about players changing.
Coaches changing, but let's keep it where nothing changes, right? Hey, some teams are able to keep all their players, but here's the problem, or here's the challenge. I'm saying when teams keep all starters. Yeah, I'm saying even if all the starters are still there, they've gotten older, or their bodies change, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Well, what I was going to also say is, which you're correct, but I was going to say, but there are some rules that change.
Oh, yeah.
So again, it's all the parts that makes up the whole game itself. So even if you have every single person, again, we're going to use the Philadelphia Eagle mentality, how many people have tried their darndest to stop the whole tush-push mentality?
Yeah.
Rules and everything else. So if the one thing that kept allowing you to win, right?
It's gonna be rolled out. You can't do it. It's illegal.
So, or other people, other situations have now understood that, hey, this is how you've been winning. Now we need to
build a defense.
Build up whatever the situation is. A mental, physical, emotional, whatever it is, especially for those teams that play in the same division as the Eagles twice a year. And so now these individuals get to see, all right, how can we deal with that moving forward? So now if you're married, and you're like, hey, well, back in my day, I was able to do X, Y, and Z. Well, guess what? You know what? You can't flip that girl over like you used to, or whatever, right? You can't pick the kids up like you used to, because one, everybody's getting bigger, they're getting older, you're getting weaker, you're getting shorter, whatever the situation is.
Right.
There's so many different factors, and that's just the rules of nature. And so the problem is that sometimes we don't understand some of the rules. And so the same, you're 30 years old and you could bench press 300 pounds, use this as an example. Now, how many times can you do that when you're 65?
Right.
Because again, rules change. And so they tell you that if you can bench press a lower weight a certain amount of times, it's like bench pressing 300, but it's the way you look at it or the viewpoint.
Yeah.
And so I think that, sometimes we get so caught up in what we've been able to do in the past, and that, hey, you know what? The rules have changed. Circumstances have changed. And just because the players have not. So when we look at marriage, if the same way I've spoken to Kafa, let's say 5 years ago, well, those things have changed. Why is that, Maurice? Because 5 years ago, Kafa was in two different positions within the last 5 years at her job. And so I'm bringing it up to say, hey, her environment, her culture, her influences have changed. So the rules of engagement has changed, which means that the way I approach, the way we talk and speak to one another has changed. So I cannot continue to bank on, the way she, I spoke to her, 5 years ago, where she might have felt, again, like she says, less confident. Well, she's two positions, up, and possibly some more coming on the way, because you just never know the future. Then what does that do? in that moment, in that time, her conversations aren't the same. The people that she speaks to aren't the same. And even for myself, again, 5 years ago, I was an award-winning podcaster.
Mm-hmm.
I was only 2 years in, right? I had not that at that particular time, I had not achieved, being top 5 in the world as a podcaster. I had not won an award. I had not been nominated 6 different times. I had not interviewed over 200 entrepreneurs or whatever it is. I had not done over 300 interviews as a whole. Like, I have not, my environment and my influences has changed.
Right.
I am not the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so
so now being in a different season, now having that, there's no need for you to be nostalgic. You know what I mean?
Right.
And think about the shouldas. I mean, the past. With all of that, it's now shifting things and refocusing things and looking at new strategies. What your strategies and what your goals were, as you said 5 years ago when you were 2 years into podcasting, prior to all those things you just named. Yeah, your goals and your strategy to get to those things is way different than what it is now.
Right.
So.
And even parenting, 5 years ago, one child had just graduated high school. The other one was still in high school. Well, guess what? Both of them are out of high school.
Mm-hmm,
Guess what? Both of them are out of college. And guess what? One of them has two whole degrees, which I don't have. You get what I mean? So
the strategy to parent those
yes.
persons, those young people is a lot different
right.
now than it is and was then. So yes, as things change, as the seasons change, so must our strategies, so must our outlook on things also change.
But unfortunately, we hold on to some of that.
We're creatures of habit.
I was going to say that sometimes, because those were our glory years, if you will, like, hey, we were able to achieve and dominate and do this and that or whatever it is, yeah, that's good, fine and dandy. But let's also look at this as well. And this is from the coach side, that yes, you might have achieved one goal, but the whole destination has not been achieved. And in all reality, it never will be achieved until you get to see your Lord and Savior, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is because of the goal changes, the goalpost moves, whatever it is. And this is just a part of your whole journey, right? The goal might be, hey, you know what? I need to talk to Kafa better today. But then what happens tomorrow? I can't rest on that because guess what? Tomorrow, one, may not even be promised, right? So I need to be on top of my game with that every day. But then number two is, as I had just mentioned, what community is she a part of? It's not the same 5 years ago. And 5 years doesn't even sound like a long time, right? But in dog years it is. But that means what though? Hey, you know what? Our health is not the same, right? Our position in life hasn't been the same. Our viewpoint on how to move forward with houses, if y'all listen to other episodes, is not the same. And so, as you stated, Kafa, even my desires or my goals for my own personal self aren't the same.
Right.
And understanding that my goals and my dreams do not have to include anybody else. It's for me.
Right.
Whereas that's what I was living for. I'm like, I'm gonna do this for everybody, whatever it is. And the problem is that, you start looking at it, you realize like, oh wow. And my example of the oh wow is, hey, I would love to have a nice, big, beautiful house for me and my kids. Well, My kids have a whole mind of their own, and have their own wishes, dreams, and desires.
And it would have been probably okay if the kids were 2, have a big old
Right.
house for my kids, you know what I mean? And they could, run their power wheels and, through the house.
It don't work at 22.
Right. It's far from that.
And so and then you got to realize that even if they had a power wheels, in our reality at 22, what does that power wheels look like? A 4-wheeler? Does it look like a Jeep Wrangler? Does it look like
a UTV?
So what's that the versions of that?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think those are the things that because we hold on to that idea, those glory years, that feeling of where, I had excitement and joy or whatever it is. And then, you know what? You limit where you can go.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, again, for those of you who have been following, us, I had not been on an airplane in over 30 years. And so I, everywhere we had gone as a family, I had driven. I took pride in that. I really did. Being able to get my family to and from safely, whether or not they're asleep all the way, snoring, whatever it is, which happens, 99.9% of the time. So I'm more or less driving by myself. In some ways, that's the way it felt. But I also had pride in that because they were comfortable enough to be in that place or space that they can my dad, my husband got it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good. And through the grace and mercy of God, we've been able to get to and from without incident.
Yes.
So, and we might have spoken about, hey, you know what? Maybe we need to fly somewhere. So guess what? Kafi and I, now granted our kids are old, or whatever, but we took a flight. Like I said, I haven't flown in over 30 years. She has flown more than once since we've been together for work purposes. So it wasn't as culture changing for her or whatever, but it was for me a little bit. But here is where, again, communication. Here is where not relying on the past changed things. Kafi had an impression that I was going to be white knuckling the whole flight. And I wasn't that. And some of that comes from communication. Some of that comes from looking at life a little differently or whatever it is. So her expectation was one thing, and I was able to show something else or do something else. And a lot of that comes from letting go as well.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not my flight in the past was crazy or not or whatever it was, and not only did we not have a flight, 1 month, the very next month we had another flight, which was a little longer than the first, whatever. So, being a whole nother destination, all that type of stuff. So the reality is that we can hold on to things, not just about ourselves, but even other persons, and not giving them the longitude, latitude, gratitude, altitude, attitude, things can change.
Yeah.
And so, if we continue to hold on to some of that, limits, our future growth, and it can limit our future obedience to what the word has to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and I encourage each and every one of you out there, to write down something, whether it's a habit, whether it's identity or a title that you might have outgrown. And I listen to a lot of people right now in our circles, where they are married to a title, and that title literally are having people sit because they can't figure out what else to do.
Mm-hmm.
They can't figure it out. Like they have no idea. And that title affects their true identity for themselves. But it's not the identity that God probably gave them.
Right.
Which is why they're stuck.
Mm-hmm.
So
But there some that I think why they're stuck and they're hanging on that title is because they are celebrating those past wins.
Right.
They're not looking towards future wins because that would allow them to restructure, refocus, strategize things a little bit differently. But it's like, oh, I have a doctoral degree, so I'm a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And they hang their hat on that title, but it's like, well, you still can do a whole lot of other things. No. I went to school and I have a doctoral degree. Okay, but there's so many other things that you can do in life and that life can present to you, for you, that doesn't require that doctoral degree. So, and we just have to be cautious and cognizant of that, like you said, hey, we have to be obedient to what God has for us to be and where he wants us to be at that particular time and in that season. So, because seasons change.
Most definitely. So I encourage each and every one of you to continue to follow us and continue to grow with us, because there's a lot that's going on. If you can really hear and take in what's being said, our goal for this podcast season is to really give more nuggets, to really give more opportunity for growth. Because we've done a lot with this podcast. We've achieved a whole lot of things with this podcast, the No Fruit podcast. The one where I won the award was That'll Never Work. And by the time you listen to this episode, who knows? No Fruit could have won something as well. Who knows? We've been nominated a few times, so but the reality is that we're growing and we can't hang our hats on you know what? Last season we achieved X amount of episodes and that's only good enough. No, it's not. It is not, because you always have to continue to challenge yourself to be better than you were yesterday. So I encourage each and every one of you that, hey, it's going to matter in the long run. Because we're not the same. Every day we're getting older. Every day, another creak in my bones hurt, whatever. So that's all I got to say.
All right. Very well. Thanks so much for listening, everybody.
And we'll talk to y'all a little bit later.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the No Fruit Podcast, where we bring you fruitful conversations, ripened wisdom, and love that's deeply rooted. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little inspiration in their day. Until next time, stay rooted in love, and remember, every seed you plant today shapes the fruit of tomorrow.